Hi, my name's James from the Let's Cook Project, and today we're going to cook a dish which is all about autumn. This time of year we're going to have access to loads and loads of pumpkins, and quite often, apart from carving them out and making silly faces out of them, we don't know what to do with them. So we're going to make them the hero of this dish. It's the kind of dish that you cook on an autumn afternoon, lock yourself in the kitchen, put the radio on and just have some fun. So the first thing we need to do is get some pumpkin, or some butternut squash in this case, roasting in the oven. Bit of safe peeling and chopping. Sometimes you look at something like this and you'll think, I'm not quite sure how to attack it. The first golden rule is nobody wants a wobbly bottom. Life is so much better when you've got a firm bottom. So get your squash and chop its bottom off. Then chop it in half. Now, it's not wobbling around, life's so much better. You could do this with a peeler, but the skin on the outside is fairly hard, so a knife is probably your best bet. And always just peel away from yourself towards the board. Around. Try not to take too much, because that does sort of class as food waste. Now, because this is going into a pasta dish, what we're not doing is wanting the skin, but if you were just roasting it to go alongside something, to be honest with you, you could leave it on. So slow and steady. We're not making fast food. It's not a race. Take that off and just set that to one side. Always keep your board as clear as you possibly can. So we're going to do the same thing with the top. Take the top off and just slowly but surely take off the skin. Try not to lose too much of the squash, the flesh underneath. That's the hero of this dish. Now, what we're making is we're making a pasta dish, so we want to think about, when we're prepping this, how the finished dish is going to be eaten. So you want to have reasonably small but same sized pieces. Now, the top of the squash is pretty much going to be solid. So what you're going to do is just cut down, we're thinking probably about centimetre squares. So just chop that up. Think about keeping your board nice and clear. And then what you'll see on this bit of the pumpkin, or the bit of the squash, I should say, is this is where the seeds are. So inside what you've got is all the seeds. The simplest thing to do is grab yourself a spoon and just scoop those out with a spoon. The very, very few teaspoon related accidents in the kitchen. So get rid of those. You can, if you so desire, roast the seeds off and have them as a bit of a snack. They're really nice with some smoked paprika or some cumin or something like that. Or you can even use them potentially as a garnish. But we're going to do something slightly different for ours on this occasion. And chop these up in the same way, about 1 centimetre cubes. So we've cut up our squash. I'm just going to set that slightly to one side. Take a bowl and just drizzle in about a tablespoon of olive oil. So we've got the olive oil in the bowl. We're going to tumble in the squash and then sprinkle over some smoked paprika. This is going to give it a little bit of heat, but mostly this is all about smoky flavour. So it's kind of that idea of like an autumn bonfire. So it's going to give it a little bit of heat and a little bit of smoke, and then just give it a little bit of a shake around in the bowl, make sure everything's coated. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to pop that into a roasting tin, into a hot oven about 200 degrees for probably about half an hour. And then we're going to get on with the rest of the dish. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to make the garnish for our finished pasta dish. So in the pan here I've got some olive oil. I've got it relatively hot but not absolutely smoking. And we're going to make crispy sage leaves. So what you do is you take your sage leaf and, just as if you're frying anything, put it in and then push it away from you and let it drop. And these take literally seconds to do. So don't put in too many all at once. And you can hear that sizzle. And what you're looking for is you're looking for the edges to go slightly pale, and then you're going to take them out again. So I'm just going to get some tongs and we're going to take those out. What I've got ready is a plate with some kitchen paper on, and then just drain off any excess oil, and then they will just sit happily until we've finished. So just keep going with those until you've got a few to garnish your finished dish. This also goes really well as a garnish for risotto. And to be honest with you, any leafy herb you can do this with. And it just makes an interesting little garnish instead of just plain old chopped parsley. Because this dish is all about flavours and it's also about textures. So just drain off the excess, pop them on your paper towel. Every day in the United Kingdom we throw away approximately 20 million slices of bread, which is absolutely appalling as a stat. And in Cambridgeshire, if you think the effort that goes into all that sourdough that gets sold, that's even worse. So what we're going to do is we're going to use day-old bread, or even 2-day-old bread, and we're going to make something called Pangrattato, which is an Italian alternative to Parmesan. And you can sprinkle it on risottos, you can sprinkle it on pasta. In fact, in Italy, it's known as poor man's Parmesan. So we've just got the bread, and what we're going to do is just with our fingers crumble it up into a bowl. You could do this in a food processor if you've got one, but to be honest with you, it's probably more effort, more hassle washing it up afterwards, and frankly, probably not very ecologically sound plugging it in when you could just do this. If you have got loads of bread, just freeze it. You don't need, you know, even if it's a day old or two, or do whiz it up in your food processor and bake them in a tray in the oven and make breadcrumbs, which you can use for coating things or breadcrumb based recipes, whatever they may be. And then once you've crumbled up your slice, just go back in, and you're looking for something that sort of resembles like a rough crumble. And that is now ready to go into our pan with some chilies and some garlic. Okay, so what we've got now is we've got the pan that we cooked our sage leaves in. We've let the oil cool down a bit, and we're going to add in for the pangrattato some chopped garlic, just a couple of cloves, and a few crushed chilies. So what I'm doing now is I've got the oil that we cooked the sage leaves in. I've warmed through the oil with some chopped garlic, about 2 cloves, and about half a spoon of crushed chilies, just to give a little bit of heat and a bit of extra seasoning. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to toss in the crumbled breadcrumbs. The breadcrumbs are ready to go in once you start to get the aroma of the garlic. Because what you don't want to do is burn your garlic, so by adding the crumbs at the stage you get the aroma, it cools the pan down again, so it stops that garlic from burning and giving you that bitter flavour. And all we're going to do is we're going to toss those around in the oil, so they're going to take on the flavour of the sage, the chilli and the garlic. It'll take about 2 minutes, maybe a few more, but not much. And they're going to be ready when they start to go golden and crispy around the edges. Okay, so we've been toasting the breadcrumbs in the pan for about 2 to 3 minutes, and what you can see here is we've got big bits, we've got little bits, we've got toasty bits, and we've got little crumbly bits, which is exactly what we want. We want the texture and the range of flavours, which is going to complement the soft pumpkin that we're roasting in the oven. So we'll get those into a bowl, and then we're ready to bring all of our dish together. Okay, so we're pulling our dish together and we're just about at the point where we're going to get it ready to serve. So in my pan I've got a clove of garlic and just some regular mushrooms that I've had in the fridge for a while. Don't want to throw them out. Nice autumnal flavour. So I've got those cooking off in a pan. And the trick with mushrooms is to cook them a lot longer than you think you need to. They need to get a nice, decent, brown colour on them to bring out all of that flavour. But to add a little extra oomph, what I've got here is some porcini powder, which is, or sometimes a cep in French, and it's basically wild mushroom powder. Or it could just be mildly irritated, it's not necessarily that wild. But basically just sprinkle a bit of this in and it will just sort of ramp up that mushroom flavour. If you can get hold of actual wild mushrooms, which are in abundance at this time of year, even better, use some of those as well. So I'm just adding a little bit of extra flavour. What you'll notice at the moment is we haven't actually added any salt because we're using lots of flavour from other things. So minimal amount of salt in this dish. So I've got the olive oil, the garlic, the mushrooms and the mushroom powder. I'm now going to take the roasted squash that we did earlier. So I'm just going to get a spoon and I'm going to pop that into our pan. There was not much room in this pan and now it's a bit of a squash. Sorry, they do get worse. Going to give that all a little bit of a shake around. We're not doing a sauce as such because we've got lots of flavour in the olive oil and that's going to coat our pasta, which I've got prepared in a pan on the hob. So I'm just going to tumble in the pasta. So we've got noodles here, tagliatelle. I would suggest you probably want something like a long pasta with this dish, but whatever you've got to hand really, especially if everyone's panic bought everything down in the local supermarket. And just make sure that your pasta's nice and coated with the oil and the seasoning from the squash. So you've got the smoked paprika in there, you've got the sage oil, the squash, the mushrooms, like so. Just make sure it's all tossed in. Okay, so our dish is ready. We've got everything mixed together in the pan. We've just got to put it in our serving dish and garnish it with our little finishing touches. So, because it's a nice sharing dish, we're going to get ourselves a big platter to serve it in. Little serving tip is if you twist the bowl and aim at the middle, then you should get a nice even twirl in the bowl. So then we take our pangrattato, which we've made earlier, which is going to add a nice crispy texture. And we're going to sprinkle that over the top. We've got much more here than we need, but you can always serve some on the side if people want to have a little bit extra. Otherwise, keep it in a tin and use it for something else later in the week. And then last but not least, just a little bit of a garnish with our crispy sage leaves, just so that you've got an example of the flavours that have gone in. And that is pasta with pumpkin, porcini and pangrattato. So thanks for watching, hope you have a go, and for more tips, recipes and ideas how to reduce your food waste, go to the website below and we'll see you soon.